Hello and good day, Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We are here because we are on a mission to inspire other families to enjoy camping adventures such as we have with our kids. Today's guest is a pal that lives in our neighborhood. Tim has managed to pop out with Riley for local beers on a couple of occasions. They are a fan of all things outdoors, but especially anything canoe related, including whitewater. Please welcome Riley Murray, also known as Riley Outside.
I'd heard such amazing things about that spiel before and how you have nothing in front of you, you just do it.
I've done it so many times.
It's so good.
It's just automatic now.
Camping with the Coles, Ben and Cheryl, they're like, oh no, we totally thought that was pre-recorded.
Yeah. Yep, I've heard the same from a few people.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. Well, and we should just mention how we met Riley.
Okay,
how did
cool.
we meet?
You did.
Can you tell me?
At the Outdoor Adventure Show.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we came up to your paddling co-op booth. You were manning the booth, I think.
I was manning the booth, and then there was a little bit of an after party where we got to do a little bit more chit-chatting.
We did too, which was cool. It's I'm game to yak with anybody. Anything camping related.
Yeah.
Tim, can
you
yak?
notice that?
It's a skill.
Fun. So yeah, then it was just by coincidence. It's like, hey, you're around the corner from us.
A 6-minute bike ride.
Yeah, and I honestly don't remember how that sort of came up. It must have been in just one of our conversations back and forth. It's like, what?
You live in Toronto?
What?
Why do you live in Toronto, Riley?
It's stunning how many of the community actually live here in Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm forever surprised about like what?
Yeah.
And well, you're the closest so far as I know, but we've got ones in Toronto, like in the core here, in Scarborough, Richmond Hill. Who else? Somebody else was in Vaughan that I talked to. Somebody's out in the beaches. Like, wowzers, man! Like, so we like to be outside and outdoors. And,
No, the
like,
secret there, Tim, is that we like the 4-hour commute where we get to decompress, little internal meditation.
You guys drive way too much for me.
Yeah.
You appreciate the outdoors that much more when you live in the city.
That's true.
I suppose so. Yeah. Although, honestly, here where we live, there's so much green around here. Like there's Cedarvale Park. There's all the things. You know, I very often looking out through the window behind your head in the day, watch hawks circling around.
My
like,
favorite
how
bird.
cool is that, right?
I went down to the beaches the other day and I forgot how close to the water we really live. Like you could throw a stone and we are at Lake Ontario. Yep. And there was a whole bunch of people doing a cold plunge there, which I greatly admire. I almost wanted to join them, but that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's cold enough for me, like in the summertime, to go in Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
Lake Ontario is brutal.
The boys, the Driftwood paddle boys, we're going to go up and do a 3-day with them in February, just before the Outdoor Adventure Show. And they're like, hey, so if we chainsaw a hole in the ice, would you jump in?
Tim, it's probably good for your back, Tim. You got to do it.
For legs and clicks.
Yeah, everything tightens up.
And then releases. They need a sauna.
Do it for the legs.
Well, they're
and
talking
clicks.
about doing both.
Good.
That's potential for both.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hot and cold.
There's room for 2 more, just saying. So give us a bit of your background. Like I know you do paddler co-op. You do guiding as well, yes? Ish?
Yeah, Tim, I got into the outdoors really late in life. I didn't start adventuring until I was in my late 20s, and it was more by fluke. One of my friends had arranged for a fly-in trip in Temagami, and this was a fly-in trip that it rained solidly for 10 days straight. It was gruesome weather. It was just above freezing temperatures, which is super rare for August in Temagami, and everybody got near hypothermia on that entire trip. And I think I was the only person on that trip who was so enthusiastic about doing it again. I did not want to go home. I loved every second of that experience on that trip. So at the end of that experience, when everyone was craving their beds, I was looking for the next adventure. And we had done a little bit of whitewater on that trip, more by accident, in some Kevlar canoes, which you should never do without extreme skills. And we made the mistake of telling the outfitter up there that we had taken these Kevlar canoes down a couple of rapids. And so that outfitter said, hey, if you want to do some rapids, like I'll show you some rapids. And he said, come back next year. We'll do the Sturgeon River and you'll have a great time. And that's where I was like, oh, there's more to this like outdoor thing. You can get the adrenaline pumping. You can do like whitewater canoeing in the middle of the backcountry. So the next year I took a course with the Paddler Co-op, which is how I got involved with them. And then when we went on this backcountry canoe trip, we hired these guides from Temagami Outfitting, and we had so much fun on this trip. And we were already pretty well versed in our skill set, but this was only like maybe my 4th or 5th trip total. And Eric from Temagami Outfitting said, you didn't really need to hire us as guides, like you could have done this on your own, but we wanted them for like the whitewater safety of it, of having a guide along who really knew what the heck they were doing. And he ended up saying to me at the end of it, if you ever want to come and do some guiding, you can give me a call, like we'll make that happen. And so that was it. That was the next step for me. And by the time I was 29, 30 years old, I said, okay, yeah, I'll take you up on that offer. And I got the chance to guide a couple of trips for him. And I've since done a few trips for some other companies, including one of your friends, Trip Shed, who I hear you're trying to get on the podcast at some point.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. That's cool. That's cool. Especially to level up in such a short span that they're like, yeah, come guide for us.
The really cool thing about getting into these experiences later in life is that you have the maturity and you know where your drive is. It's like what they say about adults going back to school at a later age. Like you can get 100% in all of your courses because you're dedicated. You know exactly what you want. And when you find a passion that you're ready to get into, you're going to give 100% of your time to that.
Cool. Well, so tell us some of your cool trips that you've managed to guide. Where other than being frozen for 10 days in terrible weather. But what other cool ones have you gotten into?
So many. This past summer, I had the chance to go up the Missinaba. That was an awesome trip. That was some drama getting to the actual park itself. If you ever decide to go up that way, we started in Missinaba Provincial Park, and the drive was supposed to take somewhere around 9 hours for us to get to, and we turned this into like a 16-hour drive with a car breaking down and with getting lost on some logging roads, with not being able to find the provincial park signage. And by the time we ended up at the park, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, so we'd been driving for about 20 hours total, including some mechanical stuff for the car breaking down. But by the time we got on the trip, it ended up being such a magical experience. And I trip with my dog, so she gets to go on all of these river trips with me, including the whitewater ones. And usually we go with a large-ish group of people. I'm a big fan of safety in numbers. I think my favorite number of people to trip with is probably 4. But for safety's sake, on a whitewater trip, I like the idea of having 3 canoes. So 6 people total usually.
So that trip turned out to be a really awesome experience.
It was a good experience, and I learned a lot about how my dog handles swimming in whitewater.
Gee, how did that come about?
How did the dog
Second rapid of the trip, we ended up dumping, which was just a bad line going down it. And it was such a casual, maybe a class 2 rapid that we tipped on, that I didn't even have a life jacket on my dog. And I don't know to this day if that was a benefit or a flaw to have the life jacket off of her, because I turned around as I'm swimming down this rapid, and I go, and I'm worried about my dog, right? So I turn around and I see that the canoe is upside down on top of her. And so I'm swimming upriver trying to get over to like flip the canoe upright so that she can get out. And then she just dives under the gunwale of the canoe and comes up the other side, which, had she had a life jacket on, she would have been totally stuck under that canoe, and who knows where she would have ended up.
Interesting. I don't know that I would have even thought of that scenario, because I saw that Salis has a pet out.
And she has
I thought
one.
That's great.
Yep.
What kind of dog is it?
I like to tell people she's a miniature Irish wolfhound because that's what she looks like, but she's just a Labradoodle.
Yeah, so a water type dog.
Oh yeah. She loves a good swim.
Yeah,
cool.
Ours is not. So he'll go up to his legs, but that's it.
You have a nice small travel sized dog.
Yeah.
Farley's just he's a princess is what he is.
Yes.
It's raining outside. I don't think so. I have to pee, and that's all we're doing today. So other things you do with Paddler Co-op, because I've seen you're I'm not sure that I would use the term prolific on social media, but you do post a decent amount, and it's always great content. Like I really enjoy watching your stuff. You and Evan, especially if you're both posting at the same time because you're on the same trip, it's great to just sort of bounce back and forth and see the content the two of you are putting out. I'm a bit of a junkie anyhow, just saying. But when you're doing, so you do, it looks to me like you do instructional whitewater. Like I know there was a weekend where Jay and Sherry were out there, Christina, who else was, Ben was out there.
Yeah.
You had a whack of people out there. Is it Eric? EJ Graybeard, right? So there's so many people that I follow and admire the stuff that they get out and do. Is that just like a weekend, like a workshop type thing to teach people how to do rapids and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, I started with the paddler co-op when I went on that Temagami Sturgeon River trip because I wanted some foundation of my experience, so I wasn't going in completely blind to a backcountry situation where I would have to know how to maneuver a canoe in whitewater. And I got hooked with them because they needed somebody on the board of directors who had some marketing experience. And my 9 to 5 is more sitting at a computer desk. It's very boring stuff, but it's all revolving around digital marketing. So I thought I can help fill this gap. This is a really nice opportunity to get to know some people in a great outdoor setting. So I got on the board with the paddler co-op. From there, I happen to like people. And so I got a whole group of outdoor enthusiasts together because I wanted to meet these rad people in this community. And a lot of folks are interested in getting more experience on that whitewater side. So that's how we ended up doing the paddler co-op experience and how I got involved with them. But my experience in whitewater has been such a slow build. I said earlier that as an adult, it's really nice getting into things because you learn quicker, you're passionate about it, you know exactly what you want to get from the experience. But I've had such a slow build of my learning in whitewater that I guess living that slower lifestyle has been a really nice opportunity to seek that adrenaline and slowly increase my skills at a slower pace, because it's nice to be able to experience it like every second of the way instead of just rushing into something and being able to drop over like waterfalls and seek that adrenaline rush. So it's been a really slow growth. For those in the know, I consider myself like a class 2, maybe a class 3 paddler, and that's probably as far as I'll ever go. But I really want to encourage people who want to get into whitewater to start at that level. Like, don't be afraid of being at like the lower end of that tier, because you see these giant kayakers like Dane Jackson's a popular one, going over these massive waterfalls, and that's not the expectation you should have for yourself. There can be a tiny ripple in the water, and you're going down that in a canoe, and it has the same level of adrenaline for you as it does for Dane going over a waterfall. Tim, we're going to get you out one day. It's going to happen.
I will need to wear diapers, I'm pretty sure. All right, so there's guiding, there's paddler co-op. What other things do you like to do for you or with other people? Like what else do you enjoy?
I spend the majority of my time getting out in a canoe on water, whether it's whitewater or flat water. I'll spend days alone in the backcountry just getting the experience of learning my paddle strokes and finessing them a little bit. In the off season, I like to skate and ski and do a lot of cross country, and I do a lot of anything that you would consider like homey or homesteading. And somehow I always feel that's like tied into the outdoors. Like people who like getting into the backcountry and getting into these camping experiences are often people who want to like grow their own food or get to know the like more naturey side of living.
So do you pickling and all canning and all that stuff?
You should see my Toronto apartment, just full of little like canning jars and sourdough fermenting. And cool. I live with 2 roommates who put up with a lot of antics that I have around the house. It's all full of crafting, and I don't know how I find time for it, honestly.
That's excellent. Well, I know I've seen at least a picture out through your back where it looks like you've got a pretty happening garden going on.
Oh, thanks very much.
Cool. No, well, we don't. I plant with my tenants, but we do pots and tomato plants that we don't get picked before the season ends because we started too late. Cool. And then do you do so like but you? I thought about this earlier and I blanked on the number. I know that there was a conversation we were having, and you a number came out of your mouth about the amount of days that you managed to get out this past year, and my brain just went, no, that's not possible.
I think it's hours. I'm doing this thing called 1,000 hours outside. It's great for families to try to get out there. And what you do is you put this little piece of paper on your side of your fridge or wherever you want to store it, and you color in every time you go outside, which is amazing for kids. But I got really addicted to it as an adult to try to exceed that every single year. So last year I did, I think, about 1650. The year before that was like 1550. This year, 1750 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's just outside anywhere?
Outside,
or
anywhere,
outside?
like walking the dog, sleeping overnight, anything that's sleeping out under the stars. Or
It's a great idea.
And do you get a badge or a crest or a sticker or something for
they
doing
should do that. I would pay to say 1750 hours outside this year. Absolutely.
Here's your gold star.
Yeah.
Cool. But my brain refuses to let go. I know you're outdoors a whole bunch. As far as like sort of tripping, whether it's in a tent overnight or a 3-day or an 8-day or what's a season look like for you?
I start my season, well, it never really ends. I try to go out at least once a month, even through the winter months.
Sweet.
And the season really ramps up sometime toward the end of April. As soon as ice out hits is when I usually get on the water. And before then, I'm doing more like drive-in car camping situations. By the time May rolls around, I'm doing a lot of weekend trips. Usually we'll do our first 10-day toward the end of June because we really like to fight with mosquitoes, but it's also the best time for those good water levels for negotiating rapids. And then the rest of the summer is filled with either beautiful weekend trips. I do a lot of guiding on 3-day weekends because that's usually how the beginner trips work out. And then trips for myself are usually 5 to 10 days, depending on what time I can get off from my day job and how much time we get to spend out in the woods.
And are you in a solo canoe or a tandem or?
I love tandeming. I love being able to spend a lot of time with one other person, and because I have a lot of canoeing experience now, I usually get to embrace having a beginner paddler with me, which is honestly my favorite thing because they get to learn a lot through the experience. And seeing a beginner paddler at the beginning of a Friday compared to how they are at paddling at the end of a Sunday is so joyous. Like being able to teach and see that real skill develop over just 3 days, it's awesome.
So gratifying, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Normally, if I go out on beginner trips, I love when there's an uneven number of people because then I get to spend the time soloing with my dog and they get to do some circles on the lake and learn how to progress in the right direction. So that's one of my favorites. And one of the funniest things that I've experienced with a beginner on a trip is one time in the Kawartha Highlands, we had a pretty novice camper come out with us who was about to do a portage. And so we sent him down the portage trail and said, it's about 500 meters. You know what 500 meters feels like, right? About 500 meters. He was wearing like a 38-pound Kevlar in his pack, and he just went for it. But the portage trail ended up connecting into an ATV trail. And if you're new, you don't know what 500 meters feels like. So we lost him, totally lost him. We very much freaked out because we got to the end of the portage. He's nowhere to be seen. And we ended up having to walk another couple of kilometers. And then we didn't actually end up finding him. We went back to the beginning of the portage and sat there until he finally realized nobody was coming and came back. He carried a canoe in his pack. Probably 1.5 kilometers to 2 kilometers before he decided, okay, I guess this is the end.
And then had to turn around.
Turn around.
That's brutal.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have so many beginner stories or stories of people who are like mildly experienced and get themselves into trouble because they haven't taken the courses or done the research or gone out with people who are more experienced as their first time out there.
Yeah, I think the only time I've ever veered off the portage was an ATV trail in Kawartha Highlands because it's the only place that we run into, that we have gone camping, that we've run into ATV trails. And they look, I mean, to see the tire tracks over here and over there, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. So, yeah. But thankfully, I only went, oh, this is feeling just stupid. Like this doesn't feel like a portage anymore. So we lucked out better than a couple of kilometers. Oh.
We had a similar experience in Temagami last year where a group of friends came out and we said to them at the beginning of the trip, okay, there's no rapids on this trip. We were going across the Wawiagama River and then we were connecting to the Obabaka, and the Obabaka connects to the Sturgeon. That was a lot of big words, but people from Temagami will be like, oh, that's where that is. Okay. And where the Obabaka connects to the Sturgeon is a giant waterfall called, I think, Obabaka Falls. It's beautiful, and there is a portage to get around it that's unmarked, like most of the portages in Temagami. Unfortunately, I got held up with a couple of the more experienced people because one of the canoes had tipped over. And the newer people in the group ended up going first down this river. And they got to the area of rapids. They took a look at these, and one of them had been on that Sturgeon River trip, and she thought, okay, yeah, we've done rapids before. This makes sense. Let's just go. Let's just go are not the words you want to hear when somebody is about to navigate rapids. So they ended up going down the first set of rapids. We got to the portage around the same time and thought, did they start the portage? But there was no canoes there, no packs, no signs of footprints. So we kept going. We got to the top of the same set of rapids and realized the only thing that they could have done is gone down them. So we very cautiously scout them, go down the set of rapids, and thank dog they were all sitting at the bottom of this set of rapids, because the next set was a waterfall.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. I heard stories later about how they almost went down that next set of rapids, but decided that one of them had remembered there's no rapids on this trip, we should wait. And thankfully, we ended up bushwhacking into the portage trail that was running parallel to the river, and we found our campsite from there.
Okay. That would crap. That would be a bad thing. Oh, my goodness. Social media. What do you like about content creating? What do you not like about content creating? What are you hoping to do with it?
That's a great question, Tim. I got into doing social media more for myself at the beginning because I wanted to just have somewhere to post about my outdoor experiences. And when I started to gain a little bit of a following, I realized that this was my chance to get people who identify differently involved in the outdoors. So as a queer person, a non-binary person, as a plus-size person, these are representations that aren't usually seen on social media, especially in the outdoor industry.
Absolutely.
So being able to help be the face of that was my original motivation. Fortunately and unfortunately for me, I've had some sponsors come in along the way, or some brand deals that have been fun to work with, but have also made social media feel more like work. So I found myself this season, it's winter at the time of this recording, and I'm not posting as frequently because of a recent brand deal, and suddenly that switch went off where it felt like work, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to rekindle my own enthusiasm for it when I start getting out and doing more adventures through the winter and the spring.
Any plans for winter and spring?
I got some great New Year's plans coming up. Heck, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Camper Christina, along with a couple of her friends, and Evan Lefebvre and his partner Phoebe are going to come out. We're going to do a New Year's at Silent Lake Provincial Park, and I'll be there until New Year's Day, I think. And then through February, we're probably going to go up to Algonquin and do a Mew Lake experience there. And then come April is probably sometime we'll start planning for either the Coulanges or the Des Moines, probably toward May, but we'll start our planning for those trips in April.
Watch the so at the time of this recording, shortly before the end of December in 2023, flashback just shy of a year ago. I distinctly remember both Sean Rowley and David Bain putting posts out in, I want to say it was in early January, where they were both at Mew Lake winter camping, and I believe the quote was, "A river runs through it," because everything melted. It rained on top of the snow, and it was everybody's tents were just flooding.
Noted.
So much water. So watch out for that January thaw.
All right, going in February then.
But not the 24th, 25th, 26th, I think. That's the Outdoor Adventure Show. Just
all right,
because that's an important date. You bet. Oh my goodness, yes. I'm planning. Like, who is? We're talking to Christina, and she said, "Yeah, I got people bugging me already about. Are we going to have a get together? It's November, man." I don't know. I'm planning stuff for it, so I'm a bit like that.
Those are my people, big planners. Half of the excitement and the experience of getting into the backcountry is doing the planning.
It's the anticipation. So
Yeah.
many people have said the same thing. Anticipation, and also the planning of the food, making sure that they're getting everything on
Yeah.
point and just having exactly what they need and tweaking from last year what they did.
And if you're a person who gets those winter blues or winter sad, then having those experiences to look forward to on the horizon, it really gets you through those darker months.
Yeah, for sure. And well, and like you're doing the research, which at least part of the world the way it is today is watching canoeing videos on YouTube. That's not a bad way to spend a
You saying I
Saturday
should get into
afternoon.
YouTube, Tim? Okay, we'll try it.
Somebody's trying to justify their Saturday afternoon.
We're gonna edit that part out.
Well, and he normally he will be also planning where we're going to be camping next summer. Right now, only because February you have to get on there.
Yeah, well,
Rebooking.
you know, Ontario Parks.
Yep.
5 months, man. You got to book it, especially car camping. But since the beginning of the pandemic, it became like you couldn't even slough off on doing backcountry booking.
Yeah.
Within a couple of months. I remember that first year. It was like, what the holy mackerel! I don't have to book that one. I mean, I tend to book the max that I can anyhow ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I was stunned at just how much the volume of like passing people on portages. What's that all about?
In Algonquin, I
Oh
know.
my God.
We did an Algonquin trip this year that was supposed to be from the very west end of Algonquin all the way into the northeast side of Algonquin. And we were excited because we would get to visit the real interior. And not a lot of people make it to the real interior. You might pass 1 or 2 people a day. It's not like the edges of Algonquin, and they're so populated. Unfortunately for us, one of our members of the group ended up feeling a little twinge in his back. Thankfully on day 1, which meant that we got as far as we could into our day 1 trip. And this was going to be an epic trip. This was like 130 kilometers across the park, and 36 of them were supposed to be just portages. Epic, physically brutal trip. So I'm glad he felt this twinge on day 1. He made the executive decision to call it on day 1. He could not make it across this, which was excellent because we had an outfitter who was shuttling our vehicle from the west side all the way to the east side the next day. So we got to say, okay, outfitter, don't pick up our car. We're going to go back. It took us 4 days to get out, what took us 1 day to go in.
Oh my.
Injuries in the backcountry they are a real thing.
Well, what is it, wilderness first aid?
Mm-hmm.
It's high on my. I'm going to try
Go
to do
for it. Yeah.
The only thing is
Do a
that
responder
I
course.
am not able to find it inside the GTA. Barrie was the closest I could find it.
There's a company in Oshawa we can talk about later
Cool.
that does them as well.
Okay.
That's it for us for today. Thank you so much to our special guest, Riley Outside, from Instagram and TikTok. And please do check them out, and please do check us out. We are on all the things. We are on Instagram, YouTube. We are actually on TikTok, but we don't post much. And we are on all the things. And YouTube, we would love if you subscribe to us on YouTube. We would love if you left us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. And we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.